You'll recall that on April the 25th, we set out an ambitious plan to move people from Oppenheimer Park in Vancouver and Topaz Park and Pandora Avenue in Victoria into safe accommodation with wraparound supports. On May 9th, we completed the move of 261 people from Oppenheimer Park. That park is now closed and rehabilitation has begun there. And today I'm pleased to announce that as of yesterday, we had completed 308 moves from Topaz and Pandora into safe temporary housing. That housing includes wraparound services such as daily meals, supports with mental health and addiction challenges, supports for people with mental health and addiction challenges, and help for people finding more permanent housing solutions. I do want to note that this would not have been possible without the incredibly hard work and collaboration of many, many people who've been involved in this partnership, including staff from BC Housing, from numerous ministries in government, from the City of Victoria, from Island Health, from key organizations in the community who played a critical role in this, from the provincial service providers, peer support workers, and outreach workers. All have approached this very large and complex effort to house people with compassion, with care, and with the focus on providing people with choices that best suited their individual needs. And I very much want to thank them for their efforts. You will know that today, May the 20th, is the day that was put in place for the completion of this project. That project is completing today. It is our expectation and hope that we will have moved all of the people from our original, when we started this process, we will have moved all of the people by end of day, and they will be able to move forward on completion of the closure of those sites. There is a possibility that it could flow into tomorrow, but every expectation is we will complete the moves today as they're ongoing. People are packing up as we speak and moving. At the same time, we are continuing to work with additional people who have since moved into the area to provide them with shelter and housing options. You'll know that a number of people, maybe about 30 people, came to the site after we had established who was there. We have been meeting with those folks, with outreach workers, moving forward, and we are providing supports to them by registering them for housing, connecting them with other supports, and working with outreach workers with them. Outreach workers will continue that registration of people. A resource guide has been developed so people have information on safe places to shelter, on access to hygiene, harm reduction, health care, and food services. We've made significant progress on this work. As I said, we will have expect to complete today, and what that will mean is over the past 3 weeks or so, we will have moved 600 of the most vulnerable people in British Columbia from encampments into housing with wraparound services. This is an important step in addressing the challenges of people who are street entrenched, people who are homeless. There is more work to be done. The government is committed to working on this moving forward, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to do that. But we're very pleased that we now see by end of day today our expectation that we will have completed the initiatives at Pandora and Topaz along with the completion on May 9th of Oppenheimer Park. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Minister. And a couple of gentle reminders to the media on the phone. Please press *1 if you have any questions. If media has follow-up questions, please press *1 again to queue up, and time permitting, we will be able to take more questions. Please keep your phones unmuted. You will not be audible until I call out your name. We begin today with Brishti Basu, Victoria Buzz. Go ahead, Brishti.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. I have kind of a two-parter. For the first part, can you remind me what the deadline is for dismantling the 2 encampments? And second part, the people who staff facilities like Save On Foods Memorial Center and the former Comfort Inn Hotel, will they receive any extra training before they serve and work with homeless populations, many of whom have complex mental health and addiction issues?
We'll know that for the folks who are on those facilities, they have been receiving training. Many of them are people on the health and social services side who've come from service-providing organizations. They've come from Island Health. A number of the people who have been hired, who were employees of the hotel, have been brought in also to deal with things like maintenance and those kind of related services to the accommodation. The provision of services, the health and social services, the wraparound services are being provided by those who have that training and expertise now. And if you could just remind me the first part of the question again.
Yeah, just what the deadline is for dismantling the 2 encampments.
Well, we expect to complete today, and the site will then go over to the City of Victoria. The City of Victoria will secure the site and begin to work with BC Housing and others to remove tents and things and clear the site. But we would expect that to start very soon after the last people have left the site.
Thank you. The next question is from April Lawrence, Check News.
Hi, Minister. Yeah, just wondering if there are people who refuse to leave the 2 sites, if you will be forcing them out, and on that, if there are concerns about them simply moving to other areas, particularly Beacon Hill Park.
We're looking now. There are a small number of people who there's a couple of things. There's a small number of people who simply have said they do not want to come inside. That's their choice. We're not forcing anybody into housing. We will continue to be available should they change their mind later today. We will still provide them with housing. What we're doing for those people is we are providing them with information about resources that are available and continuing to connect them with outreach workers and with the housing registry. But we are telling them that they do need to leave the site, and our expectation is that that will occur and that people are packing up as we speak to leave the site, and that's what we would anticipate those folks will do. Again, for the vast majority of people, this is not an issue, and they seem to be getting ready for the moves today.
Brenna Owens, Canadian Press. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm just wondering whether the minister has seen this letter from Pivot Legal Society dated May 14th that outlines a few concerns around decampment, including, insufficient engagement with clients, some service providers who can't seem to find their clients, a doctor who says he can't find a client to prescribe medication, people only being allowed to bring 2 totes of personal belongings. Have you seen that letter, and what's your response to some of those concerns?
I have seen the letter, and as you'll know, that's a letter from Pivot Legal, and every time that we get a letter from lawyers, we talk to our own lawyers about that. What I would say is that we've had outreach workers in the camp from day one, workers who are community-based workers, workers from BC Housing, from my ministry, from Island Health, who've been working every day with people on the site. Health supports have been there. All of those supports are ready and available for people in the housing where they're moving to. We're very confident that this has been the most comprehensive and engaged process of this type that we've probably ever seen, and that I believe it's been done successfully. It's been done with compassion. It's been done with ultimate consideration of the campers and of their interests and very much their desires. So I'm very confident with the process that we've undertaken.
The next question is from Mr. Lindsay Kynes, Victoria Times columnist.
Hi, Minister. I'm just wanting some clarification on the numbers, if I could. At the beginning of this process, you had said there were about 360 people in the 2 camps. I'm just wondering if that's still the number you're working with, and how many of those you anticipate having moved by the end of
today?
We're looking now, as I said, with people who, for a variety of reasons, have moved on. We're probably looking at a number, and we'll finalize this at end of day, probably about 340 people all in. And as I said, we had 308 out as of end of day yesterday, and our expectation is we'll move the last 30 or so people out today.
The next question comes from Sheila Scott, CTV Vancouver.
Oh, hi, Minister. Just wondering about the situation at Crab Park with the camp that's popped up here in Vancouver on the port property. Is the province involved in trying to move any of those campers out now? Is there any provincial engagement there?
What I do know is that there are a couple of the campers who were moved into housing. BC Housing workers had been down to Crab Park to make it clear to the people, particularly some of the folks who might have been at Oppenheimer and came over to Crab Park, went down and have moved a couple of those people into housing. Other than that, we know that the Port of Vancouver is pursuing an injunction. They're dealing with those issues. We're staying kind of, we have a watching brief to continue to watch what occurs there. But our expectation is the Port of Vancouver will be moving forward to address the issue.
Thank you. Another reminder to the media, please press 1 if you have any questions. And the next question is from Kieran Oatshone, CBC.
Yeah, hi, Minister. I was wondering if maybe you could give me just an update on the timeline going forward. This is sort of the deadline that we've reached here. Everyone's supposed to be moving indoors. We know that the housing is supposed to be temporary, but what's the next steps? How long are we going to see people in the housing that you're providing? What's the next sort of deadline that we can look forward to?
Well, as you'll know, a number of these, there are a number of the properties. Some of them, like the Comfort Inn, is a property that we've purchased. And at this point, we have 93 people in the Comfort Inn in 2 separate facilities within that site. Others are lease arrangements that we have with hotel owners and operators. So there's some, and we have spaces like Save On, which we have for a couple of months. So they're all on slightly different schedules by the nature of the lease arrangements and the agreements. We're working right now to acquire and look at acquisition or the development of more permanent, long-term, stable housing, and I expect we'll have more to say about the details of that in the coming weeks. Our focus right now, that work goes on around acquisition, but much of the focus of the team has been to complete this process. And we'll get that done over the next number of days. It's get people moved, make sure that everybody's into their new accommodations, they're stable, the systems are all working smoothly moving forward. So I expect in the next couple of weeks we'll be back to talk about plans moving forward.
Thank you. The next question is from Jeremy Hainsworth, Glacier Media.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for doing this availability today. Much appreciated. In Vancouver, where we've seen, has been mentioned before, the camp popping up at Crab Park. There are campers now in Nelson Park, in the West End, around the gazebo, down by English Bay, and in other areas around the city. And I can't help but notice some parallels between what's going on here and what happened in the 80s. As sex workers were moved around the city by the municipal and provincial government with the assistance of the Supreme Court, particularly Justice McEachern. The sex workers there were moved around the city and eventually wound up in the downtown east side, which is the area we're talking about with Oppenheimer. That set the stage for what activist Jamie Lee Hamilton called Robert Picton's killing fields. Are we just pushing pawns around a table here to try and deal with an issue rather than dealing with the root issues?
Well, thanks for the question, and a couple of observations to that. I recall the 80s, and I recall the process that you speak of, and I would agree that certainly some of kind of the way that you have laid out how people ended up in the downtown east side is fairly accurate. This situation is different in this sense. We identified both the Victoria and the Vancouver situation, over 600 people located in these encampments. There were significant safety issues and health issues related to those facilities, both in terms of our ability to keep people safe as relates to the pandemic, obviously, and meet their needs there, but the very, very real challenge we have with the opioid and the overdose crisis that continues to be a major challenge. We also know, and you would have seen that when the site was cleared out at Oppenheimer, that there were certain aspects of what was going on there that were created real risk. There were significant assaults were reported, other activities that couldn't be managed. So this was about dealing with the public safety issues on these two very large sites. That doesn't diminish the other issues, but we're not here looking to chase people out of parks where there may be people encamped, a few people here or a few people there. We're here to deal with the homelessness issues moving forward. But it's not about doing that. It was about dealing with two very large, very significant public safety and health issues in these encampments. So I do see it as distinctly different. We have lots of work to do with the City of Vancouver, with the City of Victoria, in Nelson, in Campbell River, in Kelowna, with those communities to deal with homelessness challenges throughout the province, and that work will continue.
The next question is from Wendy Stuick, Globe and Mail.
Oh, hi, Minister. Thanks for taking the questions. My question was just following up on the previous question. We've given the safety concerns around Oppenheimer and elsewhere. Some people have called for sanctioned tent cities where there's power, water, toilets, and a modicum of security. What do you think of that sort of concept or idea?
Well, I think, first of all, those, if that was something like that was to occur, it would have to start with the local governments being supportive of those initiatives moving forward. We have not contemplated that. We certainly are aware of the option. We know what it would take to do that, but we have not anticipated doing that, and it's something that a local government would have to come forward and say that they wanted to explore that issue with us before we would consider doing it in a community.
Thank you. The next question is from Lisa Cordasco, CHLY.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning. In Nanaimo, BC Housing has managed to get space with the city at a city property, and it's created an emergency response center very similar to like an emergency shelter. So there are no hotel rooms available for homeless people here. And I'm just wondering why that's the case. Why in a place like Nanaimo have you been unable to secure those hotel rooms?
Well, as you'll appreciate, every community is different. And what we've done, the arrangements certainly that have been made around securing those kinds of facilities have been collaborative. We've worked with hotel associations, we've worked with hotel owners, we've worked with local governments to look at what the options are to access that housing. I know that there's significant discussions going on in the Nanaimo area. I know the local MLAs there are working hard with the mayor and the city and BC Housing and Minister Robinson, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to look at what the options are moving forward to address the real issues in Nanaimo. And so that work is ongoing, and I'm hopeful that there will be strategies come forward soon that create opportunities to address what are real challenges in the Nanaimo community.
Thank you, Minister. And our last question is a follow-up question from Sheila Scott, CTV. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks again. Just wanted to check in as well on the hotel situation in Vancouver with the people at Oppenheimer moving into those hotels. Is there any indication how that's working, how that's going?
Everything seems to be going fine. I've certainly got updates. People are moved in. They're getting settled in. The services are there. The work, which is a lot of this work, is about building relationships between the service providers and the people who are being supported. So that work's ongoing. As you'll appreciate, this is a very complex population with significant issues and challenges, and we're always going to be working with that moving forward. But I'm pretty happy with how it's gone to this point, and we will continue that work to make sure we stabilize people in their communities in this housing and look at how we move forward to meet their needs moving forward. But so far, so good.
Thank you. That's all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining.